horse drifted alarmingly in the betting was, fancied in the morning, continued to drift. It was late on the exchanges to lose. It was something you'd see in a Dick Francis novel, Charles Buttons.
The ground is soft. It's
heavy.
It's soft on times.
It's heavy.
Okay.
And a huge warm welcome. We're back. It's the Sunday Sermon. And tonight, joining me to discuss the hot topics and some of your questions and review a little bit of racing if we can, if we've got time. It's just myself and John Lang tonight with the absence of Lorne Malvo. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Lee.
We're ready.
Thanks for sending me holiday snaps.
Yes. Plenty in me speedos and that, when the tide's gone out, they don't make social media.
White picture, there you go.
Yeah, the overhang, etc., and the man tits and things like that. It's no good now at my age. But yeah, we'll move on, and we've got a cracking show because we're going to talk about some of the hot talking points which certainly have wound a lot of racing media, social media, including some pundits like Matt Chapman, very, very vociferous on the whip debate. And that's where we're going to sort of start the show off rather than doing straight into the review. We're going to tackle this issue, I think, first. And John, so what, for anyone that's sort of like lived under a rock for the last 3 months, basically in a nutshell, the BHA have decided that after whip consultations and they've decided to impose some new rules, reducing the amount of hits a horse is allowed to have in a race, and also the riding style where obviously you can't hit it in a certain way. As far as I read it, I'm not getting too technical on it, but anyway. So in a nutshell, these jockeys, John, have been sort of struggling because since the start of the new rules, 19 jockeys in the first week were in breach of the rules, and I find this astonishing. Also, the level of punishment these jockeys are getting, which is like, so it's your first offence under the new rules, and they're getting sort of 7 days. What's that in terms of earnings? Now, you imagine, say you've got a journeyman jock, like whatever, he gets maybe 2 or 3 rides a day over jumps. That's a lot of bread and butter. And again, we've talked about this on the show about the whip for a long time, John. And Julie Harrington has been doing the rounds on the interviews this week via the Racing Post, via Nick Luck, if anyone wants to catch up that. And I'm pretty perplexed by some of her comments, John. So maybe you want to kick off on this.
Well, I've mentioned Julie Harrington a few times before. I think the time has come to sort of throw a bit of scrutiny on Miss Harrington and some of her actions. And now, for me, racing could garner more popularity amongst those who think the sport's cruel and detached from the real world, which apparently is around 35% of those under 30, if it decided to donate her salary to the Turkish earthquake appeal and dispense with her services forthwith. Since coming into post, she's shown nothing to encourage people to think the sport has a future, and plenty to discourage people from having any faith in the sport's ruling body. She's come from a sport, cycling, where drug cheating was rife, so we probably couldn't have expected much progress in hunting down the purveyors of the magic carrot. But surely to God, we could have expected some action regarding the dire situation the sport finds itself in regarding funding, and a fixture list that's so overblown it makes Big Daddy look like Fit Finlay. If not, what the blue fuck did they ask her about at her interview? But no, this fantastic appointment has resulted in a few glib statements like the work starts here and other management speak, all designed just to keep the board off your back, while he trouses the salary. General avoidance of doing anything other than set up a few more worthless consultation groups, have the odd jolly to exotic parts of the world to see how they do things, because it's not like we invented fucking racing and know anything about it, is it? One of the worthless consultation groups, of course, was the whip group, which close followers of the sport knew meant trouble as soon as it was set up. You didn't need a consultation. Those in the know knew that this was going to cause problems, given the BHA's ranking competence and craven cowardice that they've shown ever since T.P. Burns smacked the shit out of Mount Rivers back in the early 80s. The voice of the whip, Brant Dunshea, appeared on the opening show yesterday. He stated that the consultation was one of the most intense he'd ever been involved in, so we must assume everything else he's been involved in required the collection of 12 empty crisp packets. He then buttered up the jockeys before offering them zero hope of any common sense being applied to these roles anytime soon. He must have been relieved that Ollie Bell never got to ask him why the whip remains a welfare issue in their eyes, while they say the pro cush doesn't hurt. The latest tweaks designed to improve the perception of those who detest the sport, and just that, the tweaks. These people will never like racing. If you give them a referendum on it, the majority would dwarf the Brexit vote in favour of banning the entire sport. Never mind the pro cush, as it's stupidly referred to. This reeks of being another Harrington brainwave, by the way. Harrington has shown zero understanding of basic marketing technique, which is to target people that you might actually attract to the sport. If 35 to 40% think it's cruel, 60 to 65% obviously don't. So why, in all that's holy, wouldn't you be looking to encourage them to come racing? These people have to be easier converts than those happy to exclaim the sport's cruel. Also, just based on the BHA's own analysis, there must be around 10 million of them in this country, which isn't a bad target group, is it? Unbelievably, it's come to light that the survey was sent to people on university mailing lists. So how slow did these idiots want the survey to be?
Wow.
Targeting the place where most of the Just Oil Stop Oil nutters come from.
Yeah.
If this sport has any kind of future, Harrington has to be gone by the end of the year. She's probably already casting round for another grift, given the response to her stupidity over the whip and the shop window of Cheltenham, etc. If she's so worried about the shop window and people's perception of the sport, can she or one of her top team please explain to me why Dido Harding is still on the board of the Jockey Club? I've not been aware of anyone in the country with a good word to say about that woman, and it's been announced recently in meetings with the private sector regarding test and trace have been kept out of the public domain. She's a wrong un, and no one in racing has felt the need to have a quiet word about stepping down. While they're at it, maybe they can tell me why it's still the Randox Grand National, given the wider public perception of the sport is so important, given the issue with Randox and the cash for questions malarkey in the House of Commons. It's only important when it suits their boss-eyed agenda. I'm sick of saying this, but we need someone who understands and is willing to embrace the fact that the sport is underpinned by betting. They need to be devoted to the levy on turnover model, disastrously eschewed by previous administration, which now immorally relies on followers of the sport doing their money in. There was never more illustrated than the farrago of the unveiling, if you could call it that, of the handicap weights for the Cheltenham Festival. Again, the BHA chose to keep these under wraps, so only people with the access to them immediately were those with the BHA admin passes. It's a sick joke when Harrington talks of Cheltenham being the shop window to the sport when it suits her full of holes whip argument, and they need someone, plain speaking, who won't fight shy of knocking a few heads together rather than get more consultation groups together in the fight for the common good. It might help if they love and respect the sport as well, but you can't see them appointing anybody like that given the track record of these people, can you?
Absolutely. Here. What a rant. And I'm going to pick up on a few points you mentioned. And obviously, this is my sort of surprise with what Harrington actually came out with. Obviously, the point about we're trying to make the sport as fair and attractive as possible to those people who don't have a strong opinion either way on the sport. That's like you've pointed out, John. With right? If you run a business, you run a fish and chip shop, yeah. You're not marketing the fish and chip shop to people that don't like fish.
Well, the first thing to get right with your fish and chip shop is make sure your product is A1 for those who like fish and chips.
Bang on. Yeah. Award-winning fish and chips. That's the moniker. Award-winning fish and chip shops. They're queued out at door. They only have to open 3 days a week. They've got punters falling out the door because they're that good. And this is it. So I'm perplexed by the government's governance of this sport, as you have perfectly highlighted. And the other point is, if we're not selling to the 65% that you pointed out that aren't, then why are they dumbing down the product so much? They don't believe in it themselves. It's clearly not, because if racing was the
they don't believe in it, mate. They don't even understand it.
No, this is the other thing. So right, so my final point on this was why is it in this day and age, and it's not just in racing, but in real life as well, we have sort of like quangos, if you like, or like boards like Ofcom or whatever. And on these boards sit people with zero expertise on the subject in hand. And that's something that I've never got my head around, because I've always felt that if you are regulator of the sport, then you really need some absolute bods in there that actually know and feel the customer, because this is what is letting punters down. Punters seem to have little care or no representation amongst the hierarchy of the free lunch brigade. It literally is. Like, punters are last, and that's the mistake, because if you do not look after your customer base, like in any business, whether it's from chip shops to internet to anything, if you don't look after your punters and make sure they're happy with the sport and everything else, you've got nothing.
No,
you're finished. And this is the direction that the BHA under Harrington's rule seems to have taken it. Now, she describes herself, John, as someone that likes to sit round the table and get someone to talk. Now, the only sympathy I have with Julie Harrington is the fact that there are many vested interests sat at the table. You've got big powers sat round there. You've got arena racer. You've got lots of different factions. Picture right. There's so many people with vested interests, and that's what she described it as, vested interest. It's very difficult. But then she describes herself as someone that
you'll name one of those vested interests that will benefit from a declining sport.
Exactly. But then
everything she's doing is going to make the sport decline. Those vested interests should be all ganging up on her.
Yeah. And it's what I call the three juggernauts in the bookmaking world, which are Entain, Flutter, and Port Vale. They're the three juggernauts that basically shape the game. The Monopolies Commission need fucking, basically, because years ago they should have not allowed these entities to become almighty powerhouses, because we know what happens when that happens. There's no competition. We already know that they're trying to stop anyone else coming on board. They want it for themselves. And to be honest, I don't think these big entities care that much about British horse racing, because they've sort of like rinsed the market now as it stands. They've took it probably as far as they can without getting interfered with now with affordability checks, etc., etc. So they're happy to move on to other continents and drain those folk as well. They like big hoovering juggernauts, just hoovering people up from continent to continent. But again, like you said, John, again, another absolutely perfect point, that if the sport's in decline, it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter who you're trying to appease.
Absolutely not. I mean, every one of those vested interests, as they're called, would benefit from a growing, vibrant sport. And everything she's doing is taking it in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's a bit like she's running the BHA like Barry Taylor once did in Ovina's Pet, where they had a vote on what colour they were going to paint the hut. On a democratic vote, they had to pick the first and second choices. And basically, nobody's first choice won.
Yeah.
So you got a colour that nobody wanted. And it reminds me of that, as if she's trying to, that's a kind of governance. Right, well, all right, you don't agree, we don't agree, so we'll meet here then. But then it suits nobody because, like you say, the core of the sport is the punters. It's the people that keep it going, and I mean this sort of runs quite nicely.
In the last 12 months, I've not spoken to anybody about the state of the game who said the problem is the whip.
No, nobody. No, there might be. To be fair, there is one or two dissenters. I've noticed one or two that find it, a bit uncomfortable. But
well, I've found those people get involved when there's a whip discussion, but equally, I've never found it brought up in a broader discussion about where the game's going wrong or anything like that. They'll contribute when they say, what's the latest move from Harrington and done share on the whip? Then they'll say, well, they're doing the right thing, whatever, But when it's been the game's at it, affordability checks is in the knack of the funding and all this, nobody said, well, no wonder, it's because they're knocking the fuck out the horses.
It's again we've got. I get the fact that we've got different generations coming through with different ideas and perceptions of how the world works.
But again, though, different generations, you get these, call them blogger boys, yeah?
Sockless Peaky Blinders.
These are the next generation. They're sweeping us old farts all the way as the stampede through the racing. Now, you get a big race on a Saturday afternoon. The grandstand's packed with them boys. The favourites are neck down going into the last furlong, and all you can hear is hit the fucker.
It is. I mean, it's like going back.
There's none of them saying, for Christ's sake, don't get your whip above shoulder height.
No, going back to the whip rules as well. I really think, and I'm making a prediction here because we don't like to have the time on this show, unlike Richmond did on Friday. He was terrible. He was awful with that 90s winner, wasn't he? Awful. He might be Naps King, but no, can't have any of that. Anyway, so we like to sort of say before time. And regards to the whip, John, and jockeys that I think might struggle under these rules. I think I'm already seeing it, is Thrasher. And he's always maintained his action falls within the BHA guidelines, even though I've used to play numerous replays, and it were about at least a yard above shoulder height. Right, but anyway, that's by the by. But he always claims he had it in the backhand position. So fair enough. Luke once responded to me and he said, I always have it in the backhand position, which is fair enough. But he looked an absolute bag of spanners, I thought, late last week. I only saw him on 2 rides and he looked like a £7 claimer. He got beat on originally and won a Godolphins on Thursday. He got beaten originally on Friday and won a Godolphins on Thursday, and he looked awful. He looked absolutely awful, as if he daren't. I mean, you see it now. These jockeys are scared to sort of. They just don't want to be out for 7 days or whatever. It's like it's no good, is it? You're losing connections, rides. It's I don't know. I'd like to know what some more listeners think. If you're against it, comment on Twitter or YouTube or whatever. And if you think we're talking out of our arse and the whip does need serious sort of looking at, but we know where this goes, John. And this leads me on to the Welsh Parliament. They have put a petition not a petition, whatever they do into government, saying that they're looking at banning ground racing in Wales. Now some people say, yeah, but there's only one ground racing track in Wales that's currently operational. I think that's a flapping one. But it's not. It's sort of shaping things to come. Again, like with a whip, once you start, you don't stop. It's like a tub of Pringles. You think you can only have 3 or 4, and you can't. And you end up 2/3 of the way down. And that's a fact, because what's happening here is they ban ground racing, say, in Wales. Unbeknown to some, on that sort of recommendations from the Welsh government is also then a review of all animal sport participation. So they'll come for horse racing. It doesn't just start. It doesn't just end there with they're just testing the water here. They're just saying, right, well, we'll ban this flapping track in Wales. No one cares, barring about a few hundred locals, right? But that's not the point. it's the greater sort of picture here that the road we're going down. And like you've highlighted, John, with Julie Harrington, herself and her board are facilitating, I think, the downfall of racing in the UK as it is, because we're sort of, again, we are
rolling over for a load of cranks.
Yes, and like you said, these are people that right. I know of people that have actually gone racing, and they've no interest in the racing. They're just there on the piss, and it's like they couldn't care less whether what wins. They're not interested. They just get dressed up. They have plenty to drink and then go home absolutely mullered in a taxi, which is great for the tracks. It's income for the tracks, but these are people that aren't, they haven't got skin in the game. These are just like track clientele. These are not ones creating, contributing to the levy as it stands. These are just people that turn up and pay the 40 notes.
I mean, I would push it to you as well, Lee, that this 30 to 35% that say the sport's cruel, that Harrington's so keen to target, how many of those do you think would actually give in to a marketing plan and say, I tell you what, we'll go racing, but what we'll do, we'll count how many times the horses get it.
I mean, even experienced race readers like us, right, like literally wouldn't have a clue, right, watching a race, even in real time, even if we're not, say, invested in betting in running, right, we don't count smacks, none of us, right, and you'd have to go and rewind it and then look at it again. The only times we've ever called things out, and this proves that we're fair here, because, and I know me and you are the same, like you'll say sometimes that was given a brutal ride, you know, as in that was just brutal to watch, and the racing experts know this. The people, someone said today on Twitter that Wichita lineman, apparently, when that won at the Fez, it got 20 smacks, and this is what I'm saying. No one batted an eyelid back then. But the point is, though, I think you can get more than the allotted smacks, and it's still a good ride. It just depends what kind of race you're in and how it is. If the horse is responding, is it out on its feet? Is it an eider? Does it look bad? They're absolutely exhausted. That I don't like to see that, I must admit. With I don't like to see that. But if they're responding and they're finishing with absolute gusto, I don't see an issue at all. Like, that's why it always should be, rather than numbers, and we've said this, John, haven't we, from the start, it should be common sense. You should be able to sit down and think, I didn't like that brutal ride. That was.
If you have decent race, really, you can spot when else is being abused.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and the barometer back in the past, for those of us that are older than probably 40, was the old whips where horses came back marked, which is distressing. And it was for me back then, I saw one at Pontefract coming. God knows how many it got, but that was marked. And
you can see it on YouTube on a lot of the old videos. I mean, one particularly noticeable is one of Tinoso winning the King George, and on the pull-up, you can see Pat Edry laying back and smooth the hairs down on saddle as well as quarters.
Yeah.
After he gave it a particularly hard ride, there was probably some whales coming up there.
Yeah, it's the game has changed a lot, and we have to respect that also. But at the same time, the BHA, in my and John's opinion, very strongly, are taking this sport in a very, very bad direction.
And I mean, plus when you talk about marking horses as well, what people forget in high summer, horses court's very late. You can nearly mark it with your finger. Yeah,
because they clipped, and obviously it's hot. So I mean, it's like, they clip well. They're in the peak condition. It's the summer coat, like you say. Yeah, indeed. Right, carrying on the BHA. We might as well keep on the same subject for a bit anyway. BHA coming for some fire. Obviously, you mentioned it in your rant regarding the early release of the Cheltenham Handicap weights, which, again, we talk about them having elitist sort of reputation as an organisation where they're aloof and above everyone else. Apparently now, John, they're investigating as to how this took place. They might need a lunch to arrange for another lunch.
Yeah.
To work out what happened, John.
Well, what happened was that they're in the latest bunch of numpties, and this will continue to happen time and time again until they open up their website to give a full service on the spot.
Yeah. I mean, what's strange is, like, you'd think, like, it doesn't say it much. Why haven't they got, like, a full, for punters, it should be, like, everything should be accessible. It's such snobbery at the BHA. For example, the only way you can see what horse has been entered before it's published on the Racing Post or Timeform is if you've got a BHA admin account, which of course you have to be an owner. Well, why is that the case? Why can't Joe Public click on and see the entries just like everyone else?
You can go on an NFL website and you can say when a quarterback last had a shit.
Yeah. You can literally. That's true. It literally is stat after stat after stat. They've got everything. Yeah, and this is what annoys me that again. And by the way, John, just going back about the BHA, they used to charge you £2 per access, even as an owner.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to check if my horse was entered one day or whatever, I had to go on, and I had to pay £2.
Utterly ridiculous.
Every time I logged in, it was horrendous. Like fees. They love a fee. They love a fee to pay the lunches in Mayfair, in High Holborn.
This game is Donald Duck unless there's major surgery at High Holborn, I tell you.
It is. I don't want to sound depressive because everyone likes to listen to a sermon for a few laughs and shit like that. But I genuinely feel we're absolutely Donald Ducked. I'm trying to think, no, maybe I'm just wrong on this, but just the direction is totally wrong. Everything about it's wrong.
It's like having one of them bad dreams where you're in a bus and you're heading for a cliff edge, and then the driver turns around and says, "You're all right, I've got this," but the driver's fucking bagpuss.
Brilliant. You only get them kind of analogies on the Bar Stewards, that, of course, isn't totally shit, unlike other podcasts. Right, so coming on to sort of related subjects, we're gonna tackle affordability before some fun questions to finish the show. Affordability, John. Again, this is where I'd like. It's a bit like, do you know? All right, it's the same thing in it, right? So you've got your house, right? You're paying your water bill, you're paying your gas bill, you're getting your food in, but you ain't paying the mortgage. And this is how I think the BHA are tackling affordability. They've done absolutely fuck all from the start. And I mean fuck all, nothing. There's nothing, zero. It's all about the whip, apparently. This is the big thing to save racing from the ban brigade, that we've got to ban the whip. Or you've got to make sure that the whip rules are strictly adhered to, or you get bans and fines and everything else. And but then
there'll be no money in the fucking till.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is this, and obviously we keep touching back on it. And I'm not going to go back over old ground because we've talked about this for the last 15 months before anyone else was talking about it. And while people have slagged me off and said, "Oh, you just to your band a few listeners, you've been." Who are you kind of thing. I know I've had criticism over it, like talking on and on about it. But when it's not just for me or my selfish reasons, as in I want to carry on betting in the game, it's for everyone. I don't want everyone to then just say, well, fuck this. I'm going to do something else with my time. I don't want to produce bank statements and everything else. And what's interesting about affordability from a recent point of view, little snippets I found out, John, that a lot of these sort of gambling charities are employing people, I think, purely on the grift. They're seeing a future funding, like they're pushing for a levy from the sport to fund like gambling harm. The problem with that is, as we know, like with all registered charities or most of them, that the CEO ends up with £200,000 a year, drives a nice brand new Audi, BMW,
nothing gets solved.
And nothing gets solved. And the contradiction with the SCV, which they're pushing through, I actually got a soft credit check the other day from Betfair. That was on the March the 1st. It's my first one I've had, I think, as in soft credit check. And I'm just there's something very sinister about all this. Now, I've read some posts on Twitter, and this is a point I want to make about Ronnie Cowan as MP. He was the man behind the banning of credit cards for betting, horse racing, etc., etc. Fair enough. People say, well, that's dangerous. Betting on credit cards, money you can't afford to lose, makes common sense. However, like these utter fuckwits, they don't think through the rules, like they're not doing with the SCV. Because what happened with the credit card, John? Right, I'll give you an example. They've banned credit cards. Set up a TransferWise account, right? You then deposit via your credit card into your TransferWise account or similar, yeah? You then transfer your balance from TransferWise into your own bank account. Mm-hmm. Then you deposit on said operator, whether it be anyone, Paddy Power, Betfair, to whatever, right? And go on their casinos or whatever. You've got your grand, like, deposit. So that's what a waste of fucking time banning credit. That was their rules. Oh, no more credit cards. So people just found ways around it. The same with this SCV, right? Right. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be looking out for people that have suffered severe harm from the damage operators have done to some clients. And I'm for that. I'm for help, but not with the current solutions these fuckwits are promoting. Like, SCV will not work. It will not work. It's going to be disastrous, because basically you can deposit with one operator, and before they tell every other operator that you're a cunt and you know you need banning or you need looking after, you've deposited another grand with another operator.
Exactly.
It doesn't solve the issue. And the problem is with MPs getting involved, they know nothing about the sport. And like we've said before about quangos and everything else, they employ people from cycling, farming, pharmaceutical, you name it, every other industry barring horse racing. And they come in and start making rules and thinking, this is a good idea. It's not, because they're absolute fuckwits. They're very highly paid fuckwits as well, which angers me. And it should anger Gravy Train Graham Cunningham as well, with the BHA handicappers, John. He was moaning that there was 12 handicappers on the BHA for the Fez, all going through the Irish ratings and stuff like that. And it's as if he wanted a job, John. Gives a job. I can do that.
I'm sure he could.
Yeah. I'm not saying Cunningham's daft. He's not. He can sniff the moolah, can Cunningham. You know, as soon as he knew they were employing 12, he's thinking, is the room for 13? Anyway, yeah. So I mean, basically, that's my stint on affordability. So when you get people getting involved, just like Lucy Fraser, MP, head of DCMS, now she was stood in front of the Gambling with Lives banner, and she had a meeting with those chaps the other day, and it's all prohibition. They're about prohibition, John. They're not interested in. They don't care about our sport. They don't care if our sport can be funded and run properly as an industry. They just care about getting funded themselves. I mean, they've already talked about running, moving their operations abroad and saying, right, we've done UK now we'll move to wherever else, and it's like
now we'll conquer the world.
Yeah. Again, one big grift. And I'm sorry, I'm using that term grift because that's what it is, because these people don't know what they're doing. They might mean well, and they might have their own interests, and they might say, right, this is what we're trying to do for the cause, but they are, I'll just say it, fucking clueless. And that's the problem. And it's going to destroy a lot of livelihoods, basically, in our sport. Right, some fun questions. Colonel Braxton's been on. He says, do we increase Cheltenham turnover by 25% this year for fear it could be the last big boy staking year, John? That could be it. We might all be done for in a year's time.
I'd rather save it for the Lincoln meeting, but I get his point entirely. Yeah.
It is.
This time next year, we might all be limited to temporary lucky 63s.
No, it is. It's so worrying. I mean, I've said to people privately, I'll be pretty amazed if I see this year out, if I'm honest. I've got a guy at Betfair that'll speak to me about affordability and things like that. You know, if I'm deposited and stuff, and I just fear that one day they'll just pull the plug again on me, and I'm not going back after that. That'll be it. Well, if they do it again, I'm not. That's it. It's over. I'm not fighting it anymore. And it's a game I've played for 30 years. Maybe I have to go on track, but
we might have to do Barsteward's TV, pay per view.
well, that's it. Yeah, Barsteward's TV. What do you think, folks? Is that a good idea? Barsteward's TV. I think that could be a winner, definitely in terms of daily info, because if whoever can get on and the last to turn out the lights, you've got the edge. So Barsteward's TV could be happening. Watch this space. Right, now we go on to punditry. And obviously this is a show where we've plenty to say on punditry on the sport, and obviously a lot of you watch TV racing, terrestrial TV on ITV and various different racing channels in Ireland and the UK. Who are your favourite pundits, by the way? Tweet us all the time. Just say who the good ones and the bad ones are you rate, because we might be slagging somebody off that you rate. I don't know. So Harry T's been on, and he said, an hour of watching racing TV this Sunday.
Yeah.
He said, there's been 3 wonderful rides already.
Yeah.
5 from massively informed trainers, 3 which actually weren't informed. How do these cretins get paid on a specialist channel, and why are they cheerleaders for every set of connections ever born? It's shit, says Harry T.
It is shit, like, isn't it? I mean, I haven't watched it much lately, to be honest, because I do struggle with it, because there's people making a living out that really shouldn't be, and there's some good people involved that put a bit of work in and try hard, but there's some people there, I mean, honestly, if they turned up for a day's racing, I'd piss off home, It's the blandness of them, They just, all the trainers don't get the good horses that they deserve, and if they got sent the better horses, they could win everything, and it's just like they're reading off a script, It's boring.
Yeah, and that another point was made from another listener called the Kent Chopper, John.
The what?
The Kent Chopper.
The Kent Chopper.
It's Keith Watson. He says, I believe horse racing presenters need to add more humour to the game. I really miss the likes of Derek Thompson. Is this Derek Thompson?
Okay.
Do you agree? Well, I'm not. For me, Keith, I'm not saying I particularly miss Derek Thompson, but we've said it before on this show that you couldn't beat the old Channel 4 brigade, because it was racing knowledge and sort of like the wisdom of Alistair Down coupled with humour, piss taking, and
I miss somebody that can take a sideways look at the sport and make a comment where you think, yeah, they know he's a cunt, Because now they don't, do they? I mean, everybody's wonderful and whatever.
Well, that's it. I mean, like we talked about nepotism in racing as well, in terms of punditry. If you're a son or a daughter of a jockey, or you're a trainer, or you're a former jockey, or you're instantly established as a pundit. When there's got to be far better qualified people to get these roles that actually want to do it or have got ambitions to do it, but there's no way in, because I suppose you see it in football as well, don't you? Like all the Sky Sports studio, it's all former players. It's not like an individual pundit that's got incredible knowledge about the game. It's just you've got to have played it, if you know what I mean, or you've got to have done it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the very, very top end of football, the technicality side of it, I think it helps to have a manager on as a pundit, a coach.
Yeah.
Racing, I wouldn't have thought so much, because when you do talk to trainers, you realise how little most of them actually know about tactics, track biases, things like that,
Yeah, I think that's why I enjoy it when you get pundits on that have done. You can know they've done a day's work. So they've probably looked 4 or 5 hours on the card before they've got there, and they get there, they know what they're talking about, and they even highlight things that I've missed or whatever, and think, oh yeah, fair point. You know, and the bad ones are the ones that get there and just completely fucking waffle.
Yeah,
you know, just to fill airtime.
Spotlight.
Yeah, it's all like you say, this trainer, yeah, he deserves to get more good horses, and you know, all that, you know, complete rubbish. And we get that.
I like the likes of Freeman, you know. I mean, he'll walk the track. He'll give his idea if this is going to be a track bias, you know. He does a fairly good paddock. Yeah, you know, his paddock views are quite often worth noting. Even for like future reference, I often find myself adding some of his notes to my racing post.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the impressive thing, John. If you're like, and it's same with me. So I've got my card for the day, and I've wrote all my stuff down that I want to play. And then sometimes, if someone's on, like I particularly like Jonathan Neeson.
Yeah.
I like to listen to him if they're doing like a pre-show before the card starts. I like to listen to him and his thoughts on the card. And I sometimes also, you know what he said. But like you said, there's some that it's just, what are you doing there? It doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is because of, should we mention names? I don't know really. But I mean.
The listeners know what we're referring to, I think.
I think so. I think we all get it, don't we? But yeah, so that's it. So Keith Watson, the Kent Chopper. More questions, please. I like it.
I think you should have the Kent Chopper on somewhere.
Yeah, it's a great Twitter handle, that, the Kent Chopper.
Sure.
You can't beat a Kent Chopper, John. So they say.
Send us a picture in of the Kent Chopper. It justifies having him on.
Indeed. I think that more or less sums up this show. It's a little bit shorter than we normally do, but we haven't done the review because it was shit. Except for, I need to mention before we finish, actually, if you don't listen to the Friday show, special mention for John, really. I'll blow smoke up his arse now. But he came up with some good reason on Friday for Empire Steel, and he's obviously bore out. Obviously, the horse won at Kelso. John said it doesn't travel, this horse. I was saying ground all the time, ground. Has to have soft heavy. John says, no, it doesn't travel. Look, don't win outside Jockland. And he's, again, proven right. And he did the biz at a nice price for him. And he's currently leading the Naps table in the jump season.
Embarrassing in the jump season.
He's embarrassing us all. Johnny's beating us all on the jump season, but to be fair, he has been tipping mostly on the all-weather, so he's a bastard like that. But yeah, no, he is winning, and it was very good reason, and it was good to be back on Friday also. Right, talking about future shows, this week we're back on Friday with the usual weekend preview. We'll try and get the Bent trainer, Northern trainer Everlender back on, see if he'll do a stint. And on Sunday, one not to miss for anybody. Fry fanboys. I've managed to get Fry to get the microphone out of the skip. And I've managed to persuade Fry to come back on for the Cheltenham preview, which replaces the sermon next week.
You should have been in the Gloucester FC thong.
Gloucester FC thong signed by Alfie May. It says Alfie May 10. Just in the right place.
Oh,
yeah. Crotchless they are as well. And also, and certainly it doesn't finish there. Lorne Malvo's be back next Sunday, and also, I say he's going to be on the show, and he promises us that he's got some good bets lined up at Cheltenham, and he says could be a Trixie or a Yankee. So this is one not to miss next Sunday.
Well, there's some good bets lined up for Cheltenham.
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we just make up the numbers. But it'd be a lot of fun. It'd be different to a few Cheltenham preview shows you've probably listened to, and it's just boring and waffle and shit.
Be a lot more seed bombs for start.
Yeah. If you like your profanities and your total bollocks and laughter, then next week's sermon is one not to miss. Hope you've enjoyed it. Me and John have. We're back. This is it now. It's the Road to Doncaster #. That's all from us. Bye for now.